Welcome to AI Chain Reaction, the podcast where we unpack the incredible world of artificial intelligence and automation. Each week, we're diving deep into the tech that's reshaping our lives, our businesses, and our future. From groundbreaking innovations and the latest industry news to practical strategies on how you can leverage AI automation for growth. We're covering it all. We'll be joined by leading experts, innovators, and thought leaders who are at the forefront of this digital revolution. Are you ready to explore how one small change can set off a massive chain reaction of progress? Then you're in the right place. Let's get started.
Welcome back to AI Chain Reaction, the show where we unpack how AI and automation are transforming the way we work, move, and deliver value. I'm Nick Winters, joined by my co-host, Devin. Today, we're diving into the world of the circular economy and talking about how technology and AI are helping industries rethink what happens to surplus assets and equipment after their first life. Joining us is David, VP of Product and Technology at ARCA, the Asset Recovery Company of America. ARCA is a leader in industrial asset recovery and repurposing, helping companies turn surplus equipment into value through a circular economy approach. David, thanks so much for joining us on the podcast today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I second that too. Yeah, thanks so much, David. So really appreciate it. Very nice. Yeah.
Well, let's go ahead and get started with your journey. You started in automation and robotics before shifting into circular economy solutions and reverse logistics. What sparked that transition?
So out of university, I wanted to get involved in product design development. I had a co-op working with a startup company out in British Columbia, Canada, that was doing vision-guided robotics and automation assembly. And it was a good opportunity to kind of get out into some, creative, complicated design. I hadn't gone to school for robotics or automation in particular, but mechanical engineering, and it was kind of a good next step. And then that kind of bridged me into the world of automation and robotics. And I got to, see kind of how close and small that world was and got exposed to a lot of different aspects of it. So I worked for that startup for a year, and then it ended up going to work for Adept, the robotics company that I was working with at the time, who's since been bought by Omron. So they're based out of California. So I was working for a North American-based, robotics company as an applications engineer, traveling around doing application support, robotic programming. We did a lot of demos, cycle time counts, videos, trade shows, that type of thing. So that got me a little bit more into, programming, customer support, solution provider, that type of thing. Lasted about 3 years before I wanted to scale back a little bit from the constant travel. And being on the customer service side, I was kind of going all over the country, to factories, a lot of cases as like an emergency consult. So it was very tough on the schedule. And I stepped back from that I did some product support for a small laser manufacturing company in New Jersey for a little bit, and then sort of sidestepped into sales. And my sidestep into sales started more as just a career pursuit. My wife had done sales of wine and spirits for a long time. And, she had kind of a more easygoing lifestyle than me, some higher incentive bonuses, et cetera. And I wanted to check that out. I didn't realize that sales engineering was a thing until someone had kind of told me about it. Got contacted by a recruiter, which opened me up to a job where I went to work for Sably as first as a sales rep, and then eventually becoming a regional sales manager, and then a head of product sale for them for North America for a modular connector that they did. So the product was a little bit different than automation. It was, high amperage, high voltage industrial connectors used more for like power transfer, substation connections, major equipment, solar, renewable energy, transportation, trains, planes, things like that. But it was same type of sales engineering approach that I had taken on the automation side while working with robotics, where it was getting to get together with engineers, talk through, their conceptual design, what they needed in a product that didn't necessarily exist yet, finding ways to, create a solution for them. So that kind of bridged me into the sales aspect of things and took me a little more to sort of direct products, go to market fit, as opposed to like automation. And then after doing that for about 8 years, I wanted to go back to a small startup type of world where I had a little bit more kind of freedom and initiative, and met Greg through another recruiter kind of randomly. We talked for a long time before I agreed to come on board and work for him. And he needed someone to come in and figure out a better sort of go-to-market strategy for redistribution of this, surplus electrical parts and equipment that he had. So that was kind of the transition that I had. It wasn't like I necessarily was going out and looking for sustainability or surplus or circular economy. It just happened that my background and sort of skill set was just right place, right time. And I had kind of had experience working for small startup businesses before. And Greg needed somebody that could come in and lead a sales team, but also help develop advanced process and work with data, push some of the new advancements within the startup realm.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, great
Yeah,
background. Seems like perfect fit for it, and also wanting to get into the smaller company environment too, like startup phase and all this. So yeah, really, really cool.
definitely. Yeah. Yeah. It's an incredible journey. For listeners who might not be familiar with ARCA, what does asset recovery mean in your world? And why does it matter so much today?
So the easiest way to explain it is essentially redistribution of overstock, dead inventory, unwanted parts and equipment. This exists across, all different industries. If you use an analogy of like used clothes being sold at, a store that's providing, they're either selling the clothes at a discounted price or in exchange for store credit, or maybe in exchange for your own inventory. That same model can be extended to really any type of product in any industry. There's a little bit less kind of risk and liability with maybe used clothing than there is with electrical parts and equipment, but the sort of core aspect of it is still the same. There's a lot of material that reaches kind of end of life before it's non-functional. It's not being taken out of service because it doesn't work anymore, or it's not valuable to somebody. It's just not being used by the current owner. Maybe it sat on the shelf for too long. It got overbought on a project. The manufacturer, switched to a new brand series, a new model with new features, new design. The old parts kind of get left to the side. And the market really is kind of pushed for like whatever the newest design is the safest, best way to go. Consumers are encouraged to purchase, brand new inventory straight from factory with, full warranty coverage and all these things, when there's a lot of situations that the last year's model or part that's still on the shelf or is, at the distributor down the street would work just as well. And the consumer just isn't necessarily made aware of that. So asset recovery is kind of the idea of, collecting and recovering those valuable assets that sort of just became forgotten in the supply chain. And then the idea of circular economy, reverse logistics is how do you get those assets back up the supply chain to where they're going to be useful and potentially put back into service again, or they could be, recycled, reused in various ways, refurbished, retested, broken down for parts, salvaged, broken down for commodity ingredients like raw materials. There's a lot of potential here. And in the electrical space in particular, parts tend to hold their value fairly well. There's a lot of expensive materials that goes into the manufacture of this equipment. And it's a pretty big industry, although it's still sort of in the disruptive stage, which is, like you said, why, a lot of people wouldn't hear asset recovery and think that. They would think, somebody reclaiming, your car from missed payments or something like that, which to us, it means something very different.
And do you guys focus on a particular type of electronic products? Is it industrial, could be consumer products, or really any type of electronics?
We are definitely much more on the industrial side. So
Mhm.
we deal
Mhm.
with things like circuit breakers, panels, load centers, switches. The way I describe it is most of the parts and equipment that are getting used by electricians in service upgrades, new installs, residential, commercial, electrical distribution. We don't deal with electrical consumer parts as much, which is typically what people think of. There are a lot of companies out there that do resell of like cell phones, watches, electronics like that. We don't really get involved in the consumer materials as much.
Mhm.
We're more on the industrial side. And we tend to stick with smaller electrical parts as opposed to large, medium voltage, high voltage switchgear, full truck sized equipment, capital equipment, things like that. It's just a little bit more difficult to manage.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. When you think big picture, when you zoom out and look at the wider landscape, what major shifts or trends do you think are shaping the future of the industry?
In terms of products, I think that products are being sort of designed and released with more specific purpose and a little bit less longevity. They're not intended to necessarily last as long. Everything's becoming very modular, where you may release something and parts of it are expected to fail or be replaced or expire and get replaced with other bits and components. There's a little more commonality between some of that design. there's not as much, sort of proprietary investment in for electrical distribution in particular. Your circuit breakers in your house are pretty common. They can be replaced by similar design from 3 or 4 other major brands that all follow similar, UL or IEC standards, and they're kind of interswappable in a lot of ways. And the way that they function is pretty straightforward. So in order to stand out, people are getting creative with smart electronics. Like there's a lot
Hmm.
of, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, connectability. A lot of these manufacturers seem to be pushing data analytics and data monitoring and like
Hmm.
live system updates and things like that. And we're seeing like, some of that's working, some of that's not, but that seems to be, to me, what's pushing a lot of replacement, where there's like perfectly good sort of electrical parts out there that they could last 20, 30 years, but I'm going to go get the new one that, I can access from an app on my phone, that type of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. Well, going off of that, where do you see the biggest opportunities for innovation or impact within your industry right now?
On the supply chain side, kind of taking advantage of this shift, I think there's a lot of products out there that people are looking for. And the key to sort of this redistribution angle is knowing what the product is and kind of knowing what its value is. And then also making sure that you're sort of operating within some acceptable guidelines, that you're not, stepping on the toes of the manufacturers, distributors, partners that you're working with.
Hmm.
ARCA in particular puts a lot of emphasis on reliable sourcing and responsible sourcing of, we're not just finding used electrical parts like in a landfill somewhere, wiping them off and then selling them to somebody. We're not really interested in that. Most of what we sell is what we consider to be like unused surplus in original packaging. We don't call anything new though. We reserve
Hmm.
that title for product that is, sold exclusively by the manufacturer, by the authorized distributors. And the way that we're trying to grow and scale right now is just by developing a better product catalog, getting a better understanding of like what all these different parts are, where they are, what's obsolete, what's not obsolete, better product metadata, descriptions, titles, attributes, pictures. Because a lot of times when the consumer is out trying to replace some particular, component or device that's broken, they don't necessarily have a great way of knowing exactly what it is or where it came from or how to find it. So people are kind of typing in whatever descriptive things they can come up with. And that's been the hardest thing for us, is trying to make sure that the product that we get access to is findable and searchable. Because I would say the flip coin to, being able to redistribute and recirculate these dead assets from the partners that we work with is we can sell what we can get our hands on. It all becomes an
Hmm.
availability game, right? We're trying to
Hmm.
create a tight knit network where anyone in the country can kind of quickly find and identify if we've got something that they're looking for. Unfortunately, that means you get a lot of requests for things that you don't have or can't find.
Yeah.
But being able to quickly look up related parts, swap in alternatives, giving the customer kind of some valuable insight into, what might help them out, builds a lot of, customer trust and trust in the process, and also builds us some goodwill with the distributors and the manufacturers that we work with. And that requires an immense amount of product knowledge, which isn't just given to us. Like because we don't have these authorized partnerships with these manufacturers, we don't have unlimited backside access to the full product catalogs and product specs and features, and being able to see like what the model was 10 years ago and why it was discontinued and all that. So we have to look a lot
Yeah.
of this information up manually and maintain our own databases of all that product knowledge.
Nice,
Awesome.
nice. A lot of
Awesome.
detective
Well,
work, it sounds like, going back. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
oh
Yeah.
yeah.
It's pretty large product catalog too, guessing. Yeah.
Yeah, we've personally had probably 400,000 or 500,000 SKUs like go through our system in terms of
Yeah.
something we've actually put our hands on. It's been in stock, been inspected by our team,
Yeah.
and then we're digesting and managing millions of SKUs on top of that, of, common part numbers that we have in our system just in case.
Yeah.
And we're trying to constantly expand that. There's a lot of large distributors, large product suppliers in the country that probably have tens of millions, hundreds of millions of products in the catalog. And I think it takes quite a while to sort of build all that up. It reaches the certain size where it's not shareable anymore, right?
Right.
Everybody's now talking in terms of SQL and data tables and APIs and EDIs and that type of stuff. And that's
Yeah.
kind of the way we see the industry going.
Hmm.
I'm probably getting ahead or two in questions here, but that's also where we start to see some of the rest of the industry being maybe like 1 or 2 steps behind. is
Mhm.
they're able to thrive in a system where their catalog is the products that they're kind of existed, that they know how to sell, that they have the authorized relationships with, that their customers are actively asking for. Their sales reps don't need to learn hundreds of thousands of product types. They just need to learn what's important in their market. And
Yeah.
so to them, they can still operate on fairly small ERP systems. They can operate out of Excel tables and that type of thing. Whereas like for us, we're already beyond that. And if we
That's
didn't
right.
have a team of people that got really good at data management and data analysis, we wouldn't be able to do this.
Awesome. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, going off of that, let's dive into the business. What problem does ARCA solve and why does that matter to your customers?
So the biggest thing that we've found is there isn't really a full solution provider to this problem. The manufacturers, by necessity, overproduce. They have to make enough parts that it fits the consumer demand. They're forecasting, they're guessing. They don't know for sure. The distributors, take enough of that material to fulfill their demand. And there's just a lot of material that, ends up being discarded one way or another. And it's almost impossible to prevent this. There are a lot of new solutions that are coming out that are trying to reduce it, right? There's more shortening turns, improving product lifecycle, ensuring that companies don't overbuy or underbuy. Like there's a lot of distributors that talk about sort of risk factor on stock out instead of never running out of anything. Now it's, well, how do we make it so that we never run out of more than 4% of our inventory? And all of that is helping, but it's never going to completely eliminate the problem that there's going to be surplus inventory no matter what. And that inventory's got to go somewhere. And a lot of these manufacturers have kind of recognized this need and they've spun up some type of a sustainability program, but they're trying to figure out sort of internal solutions to the problem. And they're looking at it more from a manufacturer's lens of, well, let's not overproduce. Let's streamline our manufacturing processes. Let's become more efficient. Let's add more, Six Sigma practices. And that helps, but that's not actually eliminating the problem. That's kind of just mitigating it. So
Mhm.
they have to turn to companies like us in order to kind of deal with the remainder, unless they want to just throw it away. And I think more and more of them are recognizing they don't have to throw it away. They probably shouldn't throw it away. And so that there's this industry of companies out there looking to kind of take advantage of that, but not a lot of them are doing it in a very transparent, ethical way. A lot of them are going to take whatever they can get their hands on and then sell it in whatever way they can make a profit.
Mm.
And they're not necessarily paying attention to, product quality, product provenance, things like firmware, software, batch control, product discontinuation, things like that, that the manufacturers care a lot about. And we constantly get questioned about things like, how do you guys prevent, counterfeit product from entering the market? How do you guarantee that this product doesn't end up somewhere we don't want it to end up? We don't want to accidentally be selling our best product to our competitors or be undercutting the sales of our best distribution customers, et cetera. And to do that, there has to be a conversation. You have to be open and transparent about what you're doing. You have to share what your practices are. And it requires kind of this top to bottom approach where not every product is necessarily created equal. There's some stuff that we do have to keep very tight control over. And there's other stuff that people don't care as much about. And it's really just looking for another home, wherever that home happens to be. There's a big difference between like a high power critical molded case circuit breaker that's going to have hundreds or thousands of amps running through it. And if it fails, it could potentially be catastrophic. And a lighting fixture for a bathroom, right?
Mhm.
That somebody's going to buy because they like the color of it, that's been out of style for 5 years. So what we've done is kind of recognize that the products fit into sort of these different tiers, and we're trying to treat them as such and have that open conversation with the manufacturers and the distributors and sort of operate within their guidelines, even though there isn't really like a regulated format for this quite yet. And in order to do this, we have to sort of provide all the steps from top to bottom. Like we have to provide the ability to inspect, audit, process, receive all incoming material. We effectively do 100% incoming inspection and audit of all inventory that comes through our building. We try not to process or handle anything that we can't physically take possession of, just so that we can make sure it is what we think it is. The right part is in the box. It's in the condition that we thought it was in. We then, like I said, build up, a fairly healthy product catalog of all the data that we can possibly get our hands on. We monitor and manage all of our own, sales history, market demand, what aftermarket sale prices are. And we provide that feedback of, where there's profitability left in this item in redistribution, or maybe there isn't. Maybe the cost of shipping the part is more than the cost of reselling it could ever be. And in that case, let's start looking at other options like recycling or part harvesting, that type of thing.
Mhm.
So we've got this
Yeah.
redistribution top level sort of B2B service that we provide
Mm.
directly to the manufacturers and distributors we're working with. But then we also have to provide, wholesale ability to sell off the rest of the material that they're not interested in, as well as liquidation options, recycling and scrap options, all the way down to one of the divisions of our company does basically like commodity reprocessing,
Mm.
things like raw plastics, raw rubbers, raw metals, and connecting those up with the right plants that can, reprocess that material effectively. And
Uh,
being able to do all those different things, it's complicated, and it's made the
Yeah.
business difficult to scale because we're trying to scale, 4 or 5 different revenue models at the same time. We have a team of people where everyone kind of has to be an expert in different things. But at the end of the day, we think the final package is going to be more of a one-stop shop solution where we can truly be like a sustainability partner to those manufacturers all the way down. And they can just send the material to us and not have to worry about it again, and not have to be picky about what goes where or how they control it or things like that.
It's awesome. Yeah, definitely. Look, I mean, just bringing a lot of value to both sides of the equation there, really. So it really puts you guys in that long-term partnership. That's really interesting. I think too, I even picked up on it. So zero waste is been a pretty hot topic. Have you heard about this, right? So it kind of feeds into that for a lot of these manufacturers as well, too, I think. So that maybe some of them I've talked with probably haven't even gotten that far thinking about this type of equipment either, also fitting into that equation too. So really, really cool.
Yeah. Well, going off of scaling, what are the biggest bottlenecks you face and have had to overcome when scaling a circular model? Is it data visibility, pricing complexity, supply chain fragmentation, or mindset shift inside client organizations?
For us personally, I would say the logistics has been one of the toughest things to scale sort of without large outside investment. Obviously, this requires a lot of warehouse space, a lot of labor, a lot of hands-on product inspection, shelving, etc. So that's something that you have to scale relatively carefully. You can't just go buy 3 more warehouses in 3 more parts of the country out of convenience. You have to make sure that you can justify those costs and those operating expenses. The other thing would be the data management and the tech stack that kind of comes with that. Solutions available out there are growing very, very quickly. And I've only been with ARCA for about, going on 3.5 years now. And even in that amount of time, everything's becoming a lot more open source, a lot more accessible. Obviously, AI kind of came out of nowhere. That changed the game. And trying to stay on top of that and use that to our best advantage, it's kind of a liability and an asset where it's tough to do, and you require a team that's very, very good at adapting and learning new skills and chasing new solutions. But it also creates a pretty fragmented system because we don't have
Mhm.
we don't think it's a good idea to just latch on to maybe like one potential, system that does most of what we need. And we're kind of beholden to that subscription till the end of time. It's like we'd rather develop a lot of our own solutions in house and have the flexibility of quickly being able to throw out like new dashboards, new apps, new user interfaces, whatever it might be. And that has allowed us the ability to implement AI kind of as it's gotten better at certain things, and we can kind of test it out a little over here, a little over there without having to fully commit or have it become too much of a financial burden.
Mhm.
So not necessarily the data visibility, more just the data management and doing it
Hmm.
smartly without having, kind of too many security risks or
Mhm.
becoming too reliant on any particular system that becomes quickly outdated or replaced by something better, cheaper, faster.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, speaking of success, what's been one of your proudest moments so far in terms of impact or outcomes?
I would say the ability for us to kind of continuously keep pace with the demand
Hmm.
has been really, really good. We've come across a number of projects. We refer to any sort of incoming material batch as a project that really quickly evolved from, we're going to send you a couple trucks of material to, well, it might be 15 trucks of material from 7 different locations all over the country. And then 6 months later, that turns into 20 trucks from 30 locations. You know what I mean? So we've had to react to that and like kind of add resources, expand our space, move into a new building in order to accommodate that. But we've always managed to kind of keep up with the challenge. And I think there's a lot of times that we don't give ourselves the recognition that like we're agile enough to be able to keep pace with this. And it's probably kind of keeping us on the cutting edge of what can really be done with some of this asset redistribution without having the direct support of the manufacturers. But we don't tend to think about it because we're like living it every day. But when people look at our, reporting or our data, our product data quality or whatever, and we get compliments on like, oh, wow, I don't realize that you had access to this much information and this seems to be really accurate and your reporting is really, really good and it's live and you're able to connect to my systems in ways no one's ever done before. And it's, we kind of take it for granted, but I think that's been like a big part of our success. And I'm really proud of what we've been able to do there in the last couple of years.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome. So how do data and automation play into your customer's experience?
So it depends on what we refer to them as clients, people who are, sending us this project material. It kind of depends on what they're trying to get out of it. We've realized that not necessarily everybody has the same motives. Some people just have a pile of stock that they're trying to get rid of. They're looking to convert it to cash. They're trying to get the best deal they can. And in those situations, they want a quick transactional experience. They want the product off their books. They want the money in their bank account. They don't really want to think about it again. And for them, the data doesn't really matter as much. It's more of a problem for us. And they just want the process to happen as quickly as possible. So we're kind of utilizing the data in those senses to de-risk it on our side, confirm what they're sending us, confirm the value of it, confirm what we think sort of the sale velocity of those items is going to be very, very quickly so that we can do 24-hour quote turnarounds, so that we can, run out and pick the material up before the end of their fiscal quarter or what have you.
24-hour quote and then get the product picked up by the fiscal end.
Right, right. So that's kind of how we're utilizing the data internally when we're dealing with the types of clients who are looking for more of like a transactional approach.
Mm-hmm.
There's sort of the other end of the spectrum where we're dealing more with large national distributors, manufacturing centers, where they care very, very much about the product data. And for them, they're trying to reconcile everything all the way back down to, individual SKUs, lot numbers, serial numbers. And that's where it becomes very, very important. With the asset recovery aspect of it, there's a lot of times when we're being presented with essentially somebody's attic, their garage, their pile of stuff that's been forgotten. And they don't necessarily want to admit that their system is messy. And that's why they ended up with this pile of stuff. But that's typically the case. So we'll get some, digital information from them and rarely able to fully trust it. And in some situations, I would actually say probably on average, we get about a 70% accuracy rate. When someone sends us a list of material, there's about a 70% match rate on that list to the material that we actually receive from that client.
Okay.
And I don't think that's, a bad thing. I know when I was on the production side managing products, that was kind of okay. Like having sort of a pile of stuff in the back corner of the warehouse that wasn't necessarily tracked perfectly, wasn't the end of the world. A lot of it was going to end up getting scrapped out or whatever. But then when you're trying to reconcile that back and you send the material to a company like ARCA and you say, okay, I want you to account for every single SKU, every quantity, every pallet, that becomes, a slightly more difficult conversation. And then we have to convince them to trust our data, not theirs, and show them why and show them full reconciliation breakdown. And there's a lot that goes into that, but we've been able to, create dashboards, views, customer portals that show them that information from a few different angles, almost in real time, which helps the discussion quite a bit. Because when they're pulling things up and saying, oh, but we think we sent you one of these, and we can type a quick, abbreviated part number into the system and go, well, you thought you did, but you actually sent us this variant, which is only a shell of that part and is worth far less on the books. And then they're able to see it and go, okay, yeah, you're right. No, that makes sense. So we use the product data a lot internally, and I think we've been trying to get better at using it externally. And I think that there's even an avenue of monetizing the data to a certain extent, but we haven't quite gotten that far yet. This product catalog that's, growing and expanding and being enriched is definitely valuable to a lot of people out there. And we've thought about ways that we could potentially sell it, create some type of newsletter distribution. Like, here's some trends that we're seeing in the surplus market. Like, what products
Mhm.
are scarce, what's not scarce, what's the demand look like, how's secondary pricing fluctuating, where in the country are they having shortages of certain product types. Like all of that information, I think, is incredibly valuable to distributors and manufacturers. And we have a lot of that data. We just have not really had the time yet to sit down and have kind of the conversations with those partners of, well, what's this data really worth to you? How would you like it presented? Would it be worth our time to format it in that way? But I think that's kind of the direction it's going. So yeah,
Definitely. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
guess to summarize everything I just said, like data for us has been a necessary vehicle in order to make this business model work. We definitely wouldn't be
Mhm.
able to do this without a good handle on data management. And I think long term, it's actually going to become like an asset on its own that's going to provide some intrinsic
Mhm.
value to the business.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like a cliff notes almost for these, distributors and all these guys, to quickly get access to that information. Yeah. A great asset you guys have.
Yeah. Well, speaking of data and AI, is there a role for AI in how you forecast asset value or predict demand for specific parts or equipment types?
Absolutely. We've gone through a little bit of an evolution with kind of how we viewed AI. It's changed so fast in the last year. And really at the beginning, and probably still now, AI is largely a very, very powerful search tool. So the number one problem that we have, like I mentioned, is a lot of times it's product information and being able to identify products accurately as quickly as possible. So in the beginning, we were looking at things like image recognition. How do we take a picture of a part and then get some suggestions of what that part could be? Quick links to, other websites, other product pages. That works to a certain extent. And I feel the
Mhm.
effectiveness of that is kind of ebbed and flowed. It's definitely better now than it was and is continuing to get better. Using it for sort of general product enrichment and product classification and segmentation was sort of the next evolution where we said, okay, it's not quite able to just identify something from nothing. It can do it for some parts, but not for other parts. Let's use it to now start organizing and auditing our own data. So let's have AI make suggestions on what product category something should be in. And if something, is potentially in the wrong product category, it's wrongly identified, wrongly labeled. And we still use that now in a lot of our internal validation processes. That then led to kind of the next evolution, which is, okay, well, if it can suggest, another product category or that the product might be in the wrong category, could it come up with the category entirely? Could it create full product enrichment? Could the AI write a product title for us, come up with better metadata, descriptions, all that type of thing? And that is now kind of coming back full circle to like generative text responses, image recognition, image tagging. The last evolution that we haven't fully adopted yet is going to probably be like full catalog dissemination, I guess.
Mhm.
And it's too much, I think, to say, hey, give me everything that you have. I'm looking for this particular part. Find me what I need and have it just search the entirety of the internet, come back with probably a good suggestion, and then also map that to what we actually have available. If you, type in a Google request or a Microsoft request, you'll get an AI response of like, oh, this is probably what you're looking for, and here's some information about it. And that's gotten way, way better. And I think it can be trusted more than it used to be trusted. And it's providing a lot more sort of like reference material behind that. But it still isn't quite at the point where you can just click a button and buy it, right? Like it's not really being super effective with like the shopping aspect of these search engines. I think it's being used behind the scenes on some of the marketplaces like Amazon, et cetera, where now if you type in a query for something, it's getting better at recognizing industry lingo, slang, synonyms, things like that. But it's still not quite past that point of like really suggesting like, well, here's what you actually needed almost as like an industry expert. And what we want on the electrical space is for it to get kind of past that point and actually make industry accurate suggestions. And if someone says, hey, I've got this, part and I need to buy a spare, I can't have the AI system go, well, here's another one that looks similar because the MPN almost matches and we're making a guess off what this MPN suffix means. I need it to actually understand, well, that part you're trying to replace got obsoleted in 1995 because it was no longer compliant with this particular standard. According to the electrical code, here's the part that you need to use in replacement. Here's where you can get one from. This is how it can be installed safely. You're also going to need this adaptive piece in order to install it in that particular application. And at that point, you get more of that like full consultative response. And when shopping surplus in particular, that's so beneficial because people are shopping for what they can get their hands on, right? It's usually emergency sourcing. It's usually, I need this part this afternoon because I'm lying down, my machine broke, my
Mhm.
whatever, right? Like for regular sourcing,
Yeah.
you can call the manufacturer, speak with a trained salesperson, call an electrician. But what we're talking about is more just people that are desperately trying to find the part that they think they need like right now. And if they can't get their hands on that exact model, they need to be able to get something that's going to work and trust that it's going to work and not be dangerous. And because of that, we've had to be very careful. Right? We don't just want AI making general suggestions and then we're getting in trouble with, oh, well, your search bar told me that this part was cross compatible with that part. And it turns out that's not true. So we're
Mhm.
being a little
Yeah.
shy with that one, but that's the one that I'm the most excited about because that can be integrated like directly into, website search bar, chat bots, product recommendations, related parts on the checkout page. And then that changes the entire shopping experience for the buyer. Then it makes it so that, shopping on a surplus website is just as practical as going on, Amazon or like a major distributor site that's going to have all the information kind of baked in.
Yeah. No, I
Yeah.
totally agree.
You try some kind of parallel pilot project, so you could run it the AI way and then run it the current way and compare results. Have you guys gone that far yet?
We've done a lot of behind the scenes testing, so we're
Mhm.
not ready to necessarily put something customer facing yet.
Yeah.
The bad responses, hallucinations, et cetera, that's obviously part of it, but we also have to be careful about, number of calls, credits, cost. I think there's still a risk of you install something and then there's a change. Next thing you know, someone crawls your website, hits that API call 50,000 times, you owe somebody a lot of money. So you have to be
Mhm.
careful of that as well. And that's kind of a realm that a lot of the, developers that I'm working with, it's new to them as well. So everyone's being a little bit cautious. But then on the back end for internal searches, like for support to our own sales team, that's where it's really helpful because we can,
Yeah.
program AI into a dashboard that's only visible to them. They can kind of use that while they're on the phone with the customer. And now it's providing live consultative support to the sales team that's almost like having, a technical person or an engineer on site supporting that sales team directly, but it's just happening programmatically. And then the sales team can kind of filter like what they think's reliable, what they think don't is not reliable and kind of, soften it to the customer. So we've been doing a lot of testing on the back end. We've also been trying to figure out, experimenting with different ways that we can kind of like vector our own data into these
Mhm.
programs, right? I know that some of them you can kind of manage, within your own server environment, things like Copilot, et cetera. I've played around with different AI tools for different purposes. Like certain AI tools are going to help a lot with, oh, I need to spin up a really quick SQL query in order to pull this data so I can kick out this report that my, founder wants to see. And then the next day I'm coming up with a really quick action plan for our marketing team or sales strategy, or we're auditing contract language with a new partner that's asking for something we've never been asked for before. So
Yeah.
yeah, like internally we use AI in a lot of different ways. We're kind of jumping back and forth between these different
Yeah.
providers. Sometimes one works and then another works and then this one works again. And I'm sure you guys have seen, right? There's been people kind of flocking
Oh, yeah.
between these different options and
Yeah.
ChatGPT
Definitely.
4 and then 4.5 and then 5 and then somewhere in the middle there everybody's messing around with DeepSeek and then Grok comes out and then everybody jumps on Claude and then Claude subscriptions go up and we've been dealing with all that as well, but like
Yeah.
just internally to try to make our jobs easier.
For sure.
Definitely. So, what's next? How do you see ARCA evolving over the next few years? And as you scale, where do you see the biggest opportunities?
I think that we're going to continue to expand our technical capabilities as much as possible and try to kind of stay on the forefront of that. We're
Mhm.
not going to be able to outpace other logistics providers, supply chain solutions in terms of automations and robotics in the warehouse right out of the gate. I'd like to build into more of those types of solutions, but it tends to be a much heavier investment. It requires a lot more, on staff support, maintenance, et cetera. The, digital assets, things like data management and AI usage is definitely going to continue to play a really big role. And we're going to kind of go with the flow of what becomes available. I think we have to play to our strengths, which is we're still a fairly small organization with very deep,
Mhm.
intricate control of our own data and processes. And we can very, very quickly adapt changes, try out new tools, try a plugin. If it doesn't work, cut it off. We're not limited the way that, a big corporate office has to have a lengthy conversation about the investment and then sign up for a 12-month contract. And then once they're committed because they've had to train 1,000 employees. So we're going to keep doing that. We're going to keep trying to just take advantage of, the changing technology as quickly as we possibly can. And then I'm hoping we can use that to start to build out this inventory network that's creating the ability for the people to find what they're looking for as quickly as possible through single source. And we would love to kind of become the forefront of that. We're not the only people out there saying, call us if you need something, we'll definitely find it for you. But I think if we can continue to expand our internal capabilities and then continue to work more closely with the distributors and the manufacturers themselves, which I think a lot of these other companies dealing with surplus or wholesale or liquidation are very fearful of kind of approaching the top of the supply chain directly. So if we can kind of keep leveraging that to our advantage, hopefully it's going to put us in a position where we can really be seen as a authority figure in terms of surplus management, sustainability, reverse logistics. And then that's going to leverage some big opportunities for us in the near future.
Definitely. Definitely. Well, where do you see the biggest opportunity or risk when it comes to scaling your go-to-market efforts?
One of the risks is that I think it's becoming more and more difficult to tell what's real and to vet these solutions. It's very, very easy for someone to throw together an e-commerce store, pull some parts off of eBay, start selling them, and the consumer can't necessarily tell the difference. It's not hard to throw together, a quick store. And especially with AI, young people can use AI to figure out whatever challenges there may have been in the past with, like SEO, registration, getting onto some of these different channels, these marketplaces, et cetera. Anybody can figure out how to post product to Amazon. I think of it the same way as there was this big boom with Amazon drop shipping and FBA fulfillment. And all of a sudden people are selling courses on YouTube about here's how you buy parts on Alibaba and sell them on Amazon. And I'm kind of seeing that same wave come into the surplus world and the redistribution world. And the reality is that there's a very big difference between buying something from someone, credible versus not credible. And because this industry is not yet fully recognized, regulated, by the trusted manufacturers and brand names that people have kind of come to trust, there's no real way for them to tell the difference between, a company that's been doing this for 20 years and a company that's been doing this for 2 months. So that's definitely a threat that we're facing, and we're trying to figure out kind of how to navigate that.
Definitely. And then let's see, I guess off of that, how might ARCA take advantage of these changes around using AI?
I have really been a fan of AI sort of being able to iterate on its own correctness, providing sort of longer, more thought out solutions that go through a few more, checks and balances. And I think that that's all probably part of the larger discussion. I'm far from, an AI expert in general at all. My background's mechanical engineering. I kind of see what I see on other, podcasts or TV or ads or whatever. But my experience has been that you type in a prompt and now you're sort of seeing that sequential, well, I'm going to approach it from this way. And actually, this is probably more what you were looking for. Actually, is this what you need?
Yeah.
And it typically kind of gets you to the answer a little bit faster. And that's helping us with things that I hadn't really considered AI for in the past, like market research, prospecting, helping to identify, I'm trying to think of what I was using it for fairly recently. We've done some, business plan review, end of year updates and company presentations and that. And it used to be when I was a sales manager 5 years ago, that was a week of poring over your own spreadsheets and PowerPoints and kind of, creating the data and presenting it and finding how am I going to have this kind of tell the right story and convince my team that this is what we should be focusing on. And now with AI, if you can be smart about it and careful about it, you can use it to help you sort of process through those questions much, much faster. And then when you've kind of come to the point where you're sort of confident in the answer, it can format it for you very, very quickly in a way that you can sort of present it to, whoever you need to present it to. And I'm seeing it more useful in that regard, almost as like an internal consultant or an internal mentor, even, therapist in a lot of ways, where we're just asking questions about, should we be approaching this in this right way? How do we handle this situation with this employee? How do we handle this situation with this customer? And it's been evolving in that way so quickly.
Yeah.
Smart use of it. Yeah,
it definitely has.
definitely. Yeah.
Well, wrapping up, for founders or product leaders listening and learning how to build AI into their business process, what advice would you give them?
I would say definitely don't be afraid to, experiment with it, dump some of your data in, see what it spits out. Obviously, you have to be careful with, your company's privacy, compliance regulations, et cetera. But I've always been a little bit surprised, sometimes good, sometimes bad with what can come out of it. And you never really know what it's capable of doing until you try. I remember attaching a file was impossible. And then all of a sudden you could attach almost anything. And then images weren't available. And then 2 weeks later, it could make an image on
Mhm.
demand. You know what I mean? And that's kind of continuing. So it's if you can imagine it like, hey, I have this impossible question that I would ask a genie if it popped out of a bottle. And it's like, try throwing that into an AI and see what it says. And it's, maybe it'll give you the wrong answer today, but then try again in a month, try again in 2 months. And it's that to me is kind of the fastest way of being able to stay on top of like what it can really do, what it can't really do. Cause you can watch the news, you can read articles, you can hear about other people's use cases, but the technology is changing so much faster than that you really want to be a lot more experimentative, a lot less reactionary, in my opinion.
Yeah, super agreed.
No, yeah,
Yeah, just go
totally.
in and go at it. So you can take a course even, but by the time you get to the course, it's already changed. It's already different. So you
Yeah.
know, you just can't keep up. So it's amazing. It's fun.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really
Yeah.
is. Well, for our listeners, where can people learn more about ARCA or get in touch with your team?
So our main website, arcasupply.com, arcasupply.com. That's our main sort of B2C channel or B2B channel for interacting with our team, with the sales team. That's where we engage with most of our, distribution clients and manufacturing clients. And that also has a lot more information about who we are, our team, where we're located, what types of products we have available. The two big things are if you've got, dead stock that you're looking to get rid of, give us a shout. We typically do deal with more electrical industrial parts. So maybe if there's, listeners with a lot of electrical consumer material, I can kind of point you in a different direction. That's not really our bread and butter. But if you happen to have a job or be involved in an industry where you say, oh, you know what, my inventory manager, operations manager, branch manager does have a pile of stuff and it's coming close to end of year and we were kind of trying to figure out what to do with this stuff, give us a shout. We'll quote your material in a day and give you a few different options. You can decide to go with us or not go with us, but we can give you a variety of different plans, not just one fixed solution. And then on the flip side, if you are having a hard time finding something, you're looking for an electrical part that doesn't exist anywhere, nobody's got it in stock, or you're just trying to look for a good deal on something that maybe we've got in high quantity, check the website out, browse around a little bit. We get a lot of product in all the time. So I definitely recommend, use the chat bot, call our number, email sales@arcasupply.com, engage with the sales team. These guys have become absolute rock stars at being able to track this stuff down. They do it day in, day out. We're handling literally 100 requests a day for the most obscure stuff you've ever heard of. And we're just, continually expanding every day.
Awesome. Well, David, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing how ARCA is simplifying one of the most complex and critical parts of asset recovery. For everyone listening, if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to follow AI Chain Reaction for more conversations at the intersection of AI, logistics, and business innovation.
And that brings us to the end of another episode of AI Chain Reaction. Thank you so much for tuning in and exploring the incredible world of AI and automation with us. We hope today's discussion sparked some new ideas and gave you valuable insights into how these technologies are shaping our future. Don't let the conversation stop here. What was your biggest takeaway from this episode? Let us know in the comments below. We love hearing from you. If you enjoyed this deep dive, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. For more resources and to learn how AI automation can transform your business, visit us at wintersAIsolutions.com. Thanks again for being part of our community. Until next time, keep innovating and stay curious.